Hey friends, it's Jessica from Three Rivers Homestead, and I'm back with another weekly video to kind of recap all of the projects that we were up to this week. I'm sitting down here on Sunday afternoon. This is my weekly task that I do to prepare for the coming week. And since this week happens to be the beginning of a new month, the month of April, I do a little extra planning, and I thought I'd talk about that process with you to start out this video. So I've done an entire video about my planner, and I will leave it in the description. I'm very passionate about my planner and planning, and this is because I'm a very busy mom with many hats that I have to wear, and I have to juggle all of these different activities, whether it's homeschooling or the homestead projects I have going on, all of the kitchen work. And so I have a planner here that kind of contains all of those items. So I sit down on Sunday and I kind of look at the week ahead and make a list of the things I need to do for the week, make my meal plan, and then since this is the beginning of a new month, it gives me an opportunity to sit down and evaluate our daily flow, our daily schedule, what is and isn't working. I make a master to-do list of all of the big projects that I want to accomplish for the coming month, and then just kind of look at the month ahead and plan out what needs to happen. So that's what I'm doing here. The first step for me in doing my weekly planning is to plan out my meals. I have to meal plan in order to make sure everything gets done. I need to know what needs soaked the night before, what I need to thaw and pull out of the freezer. If I don't make a meal plan, I'll be scrambling and it's just chaos when it comes time to make dinner. So in the front of my planner, I have a list of meal ideas for breakfast, one for lunch, and one for dinner. And so what I do at the beginning of the week is I kind of get input from the kids on things that they haven't had in a while that they want to eat. And I just start filling in spots, and then I go back to the list of meals and find things we haven't had in a while and just fill them in. Something important to remember this time of year is the weather. I pay close attention to what's going on in the weather because that helps determine what activities we're going to do each day. And I make sure to include that information on my plan for the week. All right, so I filled out my monthly planner here, and this is what our daily flow looks like if you're curious about what a day looks like for us. So I wake up at about 6:30, and by 7, Adam's dressed and I have tea with him. We do breakfast, our morning chores, then I clean the kitchen, and then it's time for everybody to get dressed. Then it is school. I give myself about a half an hour prep time right before school, and the kids prep some stuff too. And then we just do school all the way up until 12 o'clock. Well, the kids do school till 12:30. At 12, I start making lunch. And then after lunch is nap time for me and the little boys, and then it's free time for the older children. Following that, we have our afternoon chores, then it's dinner, and this is what the end of the day looks like. So our daily flow changes as the children's ages change and things, but that's what it looks like right now. And here's my master to-do list. That will continue to grow as the month goes on because I'm sure there will be more things we need to do in the garden. And this is what my weekly plan looks like. I have my meal plan, all the meal prep I need to do, and any extra chores that need done. I included the weather information on the side, and it just feels so good to be all set and ready for the week. On my other page, I have some special tasks I want to do for the children. I have special schoolwork, the group lessons that we're going to be doing for the week, and then I have an area of social media work that I need to do both on YouTube and on Instagram. So I'm all set and ready to start the week. Speaking of starting the week, it started with some snow. It's been crazy weather here in Ohio. One day it's snowing, the next day it's 70 degrees, the next day it drops down in the teens. It's just all over the place. But we are running low on wood. This year we ran 2 wood stoves because we had the puppies that we were growing out in the garage. And there's a wood stove out there to heat it. And then obviously we heat with wood in our house. So we went through quite a bit more wood than we do in a normal year. So Adam is still having to split up all the seasoned wood that he can find on the property just to get us through the rest of the month because the weather is looking like it's still going to stay pretty chilly, unfortunately. A common question I get is, as a homeschooling family with a lot of children in different age ranges, what do I do to keep the little boys happy while we're doing school with the big kids? So this is a roll of butcher paper. I get it at Sam's Club. This is great for entertaining little guys. I use this paper for things like homemade wrapping paper. We make banners and things for the wall out of this. There are so many uses for this paper, and you can get a really good deal on it at Sam's Club. It's great for crafting. So today I kind of lined our table with some of that butcher paper, and I'm holding it down with some painter's tape just so the little boys can't slide it around and mess it up. And then I got out sets of stamps. This is really fun for the children. We have some body part stamps. These are some stamps of dinosaurs. We have animal footprints and animal tracks, some people. We've got letter stamps over here for them to play with. And then these are fun for the little guys because they don't require a separate ink pad. These are just random little dinosaurs and other shapes that they can stamp directly onto the paper. So this is a great way to keep the little guys busy. Sometimes I'll put this paper down and I'll get out watercolors, or we'll do it outside on our picnic table with paints and things. Sometimes just give them crayons. And this, because it's something they don't do very often, it's novel and it's new, so this will definitely keep them busy today as we do our group lesson. So as you can see, the boys are already all about it. Just teaching little Benji here how to get the caps off of the stamp all by himself, because he will interrupt our school if he's not able to do that. And once they're all settled in and everybody knows what's going on, we can go ahead and start school. So the majority of our homeschool subjects, like math and language arts, are done separately. The children are at their own individual levels, so those are lessons they do on their own. But we always start every homeschool day with a different group lesson. And we kind of do unit studies that vary throughout the year depending on what we're interested in learning about. History is what we chose to do on this day. And so we'll just gather together and I will read a chapter from the history book that we're working through. On this particular day, we were talking about the abolitionists and the end of the slave trade, and it was a really wonderful discussion that we had together. The children really get into these read-alouds. We end up what would maybe normally take 20-25 minutes if we were just reading the material, usually ends up taking twice as long because we stop and pause and the kids ask questions, they're engaged. It's just a really fun way to learn together. So these subjects like history, science, geography, Bible, these are topics that we tend to learn all together as a group, even though we have varied ages that we're dealing with and varied grade levels. We just really enjoy our read aloud time. And as long as the little boys are busy and happy and content with their activity, this is a really fruitful time for us to learn together as a family. So that is our secret. If you are looking for a way to get through read-alouds or group lessons with your older children, I encourage you to take the time to set your little ones up with an activity before you begin your school day with the big kids. That investment in that time will pay off and you can get a lot accomplished. All right, guys, and it is that time of year. It is egg season. We are just swimming in eggs. You know that throughout the winter we have to rely on water-glassed eggs because the hens take a laying break, but the break is over. And as you can see, springtime eggs mean dirty eggs because the chicken run is quite muddy from all of the rain. So the beginning of every week we have to wash the eggs before we can put them in the fridge because it's hard to crack eggs that are this disgusting. Any eggs that are somewhat clean, they don't have to be perfectly clean, but if they're clean enough, we'll save those and we can incubate those. It is time to hatch some chicks this week, so we are going to start that process and we're saving these eggs. I will show you that later on. But first, I need to get all of these eggs washed. I just have a special dedicated scrub brush here that I use. I just fill my sink with the dirty eggs and we scrub them. And then once they're all clean, I can get them in the fridge. I think on this day I was working with about 8 dozen eggs. So it's definitely the time of year where we need to figure out what we're going to do with all of these eggs. So one thing we can do with extra eggs is I mentioned incubating them. So this is the incubator that I have. I'm going to link it in the description. It's a Nurture Right 360. I like it because it has the button here to candle the eggs, and I'll show you that as we do it. It shows the temperature and the humidity level, and it's just a really nice little incubator. We've used this now for 3 years and have had great hatch rates with it. And so obviously we're going to be using it again. So I have a selection of somewhat clean eggs here. They're clean enough. As you can see, some of them might have a little bit of mud or mess on them, but that's fine. It's not like water glassing where they have to be 100% perfectly clean. A little bit of mess won't hurt anything in the incubator. But all I'm going to do is kind of go through and I'm going to select, just a variety of colors, some green eggs, some olive eggs, some blue ones, some brown, some white, and then we're going to get them going here in the incubator. So we keep our little incubator out on the kitchen counter here. As you can see, I can monitor the temperature and the humidity. The levels are obviously off at this point because I just plugged it in. We want it to be around 99 degrees, and we want the humidity somewhere between 50 to 60%. And so keeping it in the kitchen, I can check on it every now and then and just make sure that everything's going okay. And as you can see later on, it's starting to balance out. The humidity was a little high, and we'll just adjust the water to get that to where it needs to be. And I'll show you these eggs as they continue to develop over the next couple weeks. We're left with a lot of leftover washed eggs, and as you know, I can't water glass eggs in which the bloom has been removed through washing. So we're going to try freeze drying some eggs. I'm going to do this a couple different ways. I am separating the yolks and the whites, and I'm going to freeze dry them separately to use them for different purposes. And this is something that I haven't really seen done much. I've seen a lot of people scramble eggs to freeze dry, but I have no idea how these yolks are going to turn out. I haven't seen anyone do this. And then these whites I'm hoping to use as meringue powder, and then I'll do a tray of a dozen scrambled duck eggs and a dozen scrambled chicken eggs, and we're just going to see how these turn out and how we like this over water glassing. So this is what it all looks like before it is heading into the freeze dryer, and then I will show you what it looks like when it comes out. All right, here we go. These are the scrambled eggs, the chicken eggs and the duck eggs. And I have watched enough YouTube videos on freeze-dried scrambled eggs to know that these are going to turn out great. Here are the egg whites only, and David will definitely enjoy using those for his angel food cakes and meringues and things. And then here is what the yolks turned out like. They ended up being kind of like a hard-boiled egg texture, so we'll talk about that a little more here in a second. Now I'm just sitting down. It was the end of a long day. Everybody else in the house was asleep, and I was having to wait until the freeze dryer finished before I could go to bed. You can't always predict when it's going to be done, and unfortunately I had to stay up a little late to get these in the Mylar on this particular night. So what I will do is I'm putting the scrambled eggs into Mylar, and the reason that I am doing that is because I don't plan to break into these eggs until next winter, and so the Mylar is the best for long-term storage. If these were eggs I were going to use maybe in the next 6 months or so, I would just put the egg powder maybe in a mason jar and put it on my pantry shelf, but the Mylar definitely is going to keep them fresher, longer, and this will work out nicely. I ended up putting everything into the Mylar except for the egg yolks because I really want to experiment with these. This is what they look like. As I mentioned, they're kind of the texture of a hard-boiled egg yolk, but a little harder. So I'm just adding some water. I'm going to try rehydrating these, and I can already tell that they are not going to rehydrate back into the texture of a raw egg yolk. The freezing process definitely, I don't know if it cooked them a little bit or changed them at all, but my intention for these is I would like to use these to make homemade mayonnaise because I use egg yolks in my mayo, and I can already tell before I even started it that it was not going to set because the texture of those yolks were different. And that's okay. Not every experiment is going to work out perfectly, and this unemulsified mayonnaise won't go to waste. I'll put it in my fridge and use it in some scrambled eggs, and it'll be just fine. But what these will be good for is to be grated. Raw egg yolk like this, it kind of has a cheese flavor, and as a dairy-free family, I can just grate these egg yolks over different dishes, and that will give us a cheese flavor. So that will not go to waste. I'm just not sure that the egg yolks are something that I will end up doing again in the future. So as I mentioned, the weather has been all over the place here for the last couple weeks. 2 weeks ago, we were just in garden mode. I was out here building beds, getting stuff accomplished, and then all of a sudden last week, I feel like we were in a standstill. We just couldn't get outside to get anything done. And then we had one day this week where it was 71 degrees. It was really windy, but at least it was warm enough to work outside comfortably. And I told the boys, we have 3 boxes of garden beds left to build. There are 2 beds per box, and there are 3 of us. So we each are going to put together 2 beds apiece, and we're just going to get it done on this afternoon. These beds are not difficult to build at all. It's more just tedious. There are 32 screws to put in place per bed, and it just kind of hurts your back and cramps your fingers to do all of that work with your hands like that. But didn't take us much time at all, and we just decided to all work together and get the job done. So many people have asked why I'm going to the trouble to switch to raised beds, and it's for many reasons this year. I've mentioned before that I have been battling voles over the last couple of years in my garden, and I'm just sick of the amount of loss that occurs due to these voles. And since we're lining these raised beds with hardware cloth, that's definitely going to help prevent the voles from being able, well, Lord willing, it will prevent the voles from being able to get to my seedlings and seed. So that's one reason. The other reason is that we have very hard clay soil here, and I've tried and tried to work this soil and amend it and get it nice and fluffy, and there are certain plants that do not like my soil. So building these beds will allow me to bring in soil and hopefully have better results for that. And then a third reason is that doing it this way, I think, is going to make it much more manageable for me as a busy mom. I think weeding will be easier, and just managing the garden with the raised beds is just going to make things a little more efficient and effective. So, all right, we did it. We got all 18 of the new metal beds built, and I have this area here that is my garlic, that eventually, once that garlic is pulled, we'll put more beds there. This area currently has my strawberries in it, so I'm going to go and I'm going to dig out all my strawberries and I'm going to transfer them somewhere else, and then we're going to kind of cultivate this soil. I'm going to put landscape fabric over it, and then I will plant directly into the ground in this place, probably some tomato plants and things. So it's coming together. We just have a little bit more work to do, and then hopefully we'll be done. The garlic is coming up nicely. We've got some chives coming up, and I am ready to start planting, hopefully in the next couple weeks. But until I can get out in my garden and plant, I'm just having to settle with doing some winter sowing and some other seed starting indoors. And I love basil. It is one of my favorite things to grow. I've got tons of different basil varieties here, and I'm just selecting a few to start in the winter sown jugs. I'll show you what I'm going to do this week. So I'm going to do a sweet basil. We do a lot of pesto here. I like to preserve it for the winter, and so I grow a lot of basil for that purpose. I'm also going to do this Genovese basil. This is a really pretty purple variety. It is a dark purple opal basil, and I just like it because it's pretty and something different. Lemon basil is probably my #1 favorite smell in the entire world. If you have never had the pleasure of experiencing lemon basil, you are missing out, and I want to encourage you to plant some lemon basil this year because it is amazing. We're going to also plant some oregano today, and then some rosemary, and I'm doing this because I mentioned it in a previous video how I struggle with rosemary, and people told me that it would do much better in my winter sown jugs outdoors. So that is what we're going to try and see if we have better germination that way. All right, going to get all my basil here put away, and we're just going to get the rest of this planted. Basil is a wonderful companion plant for tomatoes, and since I grow quite a few tomatoes every year, I grow a lot of basil, and then I just kind of plant the basil in between my tomato plants, and the two complement each other really well. And some things you can just never have enough of, and tomatoes are one of those things. Basil is another one of them. Back in the kitchen, and I wanted to share with you an easy beans and rice meal that I made this week. A lot of people are talking about inflation and increasing food prices, and I thought I would show you something that we're doing to cut down on costs here, and that is using more beans throughout the week in our lunches. So I'm just getting some rice out of one of my 5-gallon buckets here, and I'm going to get that cooking. I've got some bacon grease here, and I'm going to get that in my cast iron pan. Got quite a bit of it in the pan, and I'm melting that down. I'm going to grab an onion, and we're going to chop that up, and we're going to get that onion sauteing in the bacon grease here. If you followed me through my pantry challenge, you know I don't often work off of recipes. I just kind of use what I have, and that's what I'm going to be doing with this meal. But I'm going to show you how you can make any bean dish pretty delicious here, just using what you have. I had some radishes in the fridge that I needed to use up, so I'm just going to chop those and add them in with the onions and let them soften and saute a little bit in that bacon grease. If you're not saving your bacon grease to cook with, you are really missing out. It's one of the most delicious and flavorful cooking fats that there are out there, so make sure that you're setting that aside. I am also adding some cherry tomatoes. Just grab them straight out of the fridge and toss them in there. Here I've got a quart of home canned black beans. Just going to get those ready. I'm throwing in a few handfuls of spinach to cook down because, we need something green in our meal, so that will do lovely. And really, you could add anything, any kind of greens, some peppers, some sweet peppers or green peppers would do great. Garlic chopped up would be lovely. Just add whatever veggies you have on hand and just get them kind of sauteing up in that bacon grease. Home canned beans are so cheap. It's such a cheap meal and just an easy meal. Using the home canned beans and not having to cook them from scratch today probably saved me, several hours worth of time and effort. So I just added the beans in there, and then I'm grabbing my potato masher and mashing those up along with those cherry tomatoes, making sure they're all smashed. And then we're going to continue to let this cook down. We're going to add our spices to it. We're going to start with a little bit of oregano. I'm just going to sprinkle some of that in there. Next, we're going to do some cumin. Sprinkle that on top. Get that mixed together. I'm also going to add some freeze-dried garlic scape powder to give it some garlic flavor, and I'm putting homemade raw liver powder. That was freeze-dried raw liver, and sneaking that in there for some extra nutrition. The kids will never notice it. All right, and then we have some avocado that we need to use up before it goes bad, so I'm going to get that chopped up. And then also grab a little bowl of salsa for the children. And then this is how we're going to serve it. So we've got our beans here. We've got our rice cooked up. And then we also had some corn chips to use up. So I'm setting that out with it. We've got the salsa and the avocado. And the kids can just make their own little plates. I think they're hungry and ready to eat. As food prices continue to increase, you really can't go wrong with beans and rice, and it's really a delicious meal. Okay, something else happened this week that I'm very excited. My good friends from the Texas Boys decided to send us some cuttings. We have elderberry cuttings and goji berry cuttings. If you aren't following the Texas Boys, I'm going to link their channel in the description. And they are an amazing family down in Texas. They sell these cuttings of things like figs, elderberries, blackberries, goji berries, you name it, and you can get them on their website. I'm going to go ahead and start rooting these cuttings, and I'm doing it using water. This is just a simple method. There are lots of ways that you can root cuttings like this, but we are just using water in a mason jar. You want the water to be about halfway up the length of the cutting. We're going to do it with our goji berries as well. And then I'm just going to sit these in my kitchen window where it's kind of sunny, and we're going to let them get roots. We'll replace the water every couple days. We're going to ignore my dirty kitchen window that needs cleaned and look at those beautiful cuttings instead. But make sure you check out the Texas Boys and get yourself some cuttings to start your own fruit trees this year. So we ended the week with more cold weather. It was snowy once again toward the end of the week, and we ended it with a lot of work. We ended up having some gravel delivered and then a little bit of soil delivered. We got about 5 yards delivered so far, and we're going to start filling garden beds over the weekend. That's the chore. And Adam and the kids are busy spreading that gravel out. We needed that for the driveway. So that is what we're going to be up to over the weekend. And hopefully in next week's video, I will have most of the garden beds filled and we can start planting some of our cold hardy crops and get the garden going for real now. We put a lot of work in so far into getting the bed structures and everything all set up, and I am very excited now to start actually planting in this year's garden. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little peek into our week. We hope you and your family are blessed and having a wonderful week as well, and we look forward to seeing you next week, friends. Talk to you later. Bye.